Hello, welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us today, right after the 4th of July, on this roundtable on migration in Morocco, which is the third of a series of policy conversations with youth from North Africa in Morocco. There will be three more in the fall, so stay tuned. I want to start by thanking the Middle East Institute for co-hosting this series with the North African Policy Initiative. After two successful youth policy roundtable series on Libya and on Tunisia that we started a couple of years ago. My name is Jean-Louis Romanet-Peroux. I'm the director of the North African Policy Initiative, which is an independent, non-profit and non-partisan NGO based in Tunis and covers North Africa. NAPI seeks to strengthen the democratic governance through the civic participation and engagement of youth. In parallel to our philanthropic activities, we carry out research, training, program design, program evaluation for international development and cooperation in the MENA region. Thank you, Faria, from the Middle East Institute. She shared the link in case you want to subscribe to our newsletter and keep abreast with our activities and news. Before I introduce the panel and the topic, I'd like to spend two words on the nature of this kind of unique series of roundtable discussions, because it was born from a conversation between NAPI and the Middle East Institute. Around the desire to give room to local youth from North Africa to share their perspective on relevant policy issues for their country. It's quite rare to have a number of successive roundtables with local youth activists, researchers, practitioners who share their perspective, their experience regarding these policy issues that they are living and are exposed to on a daily basis from the ground. So this is the third series, this time in Morocco, and today we'll focus on migration, which has become a very, very important policy issue, not just for the region, but globally, but particularly for the European Union in the last few years. Morocco is a country of departure, transit, and destination for migration. That's historically. However, the situation is changing in the recent years. The net migration rate, which is how many people arrive compared to how many people leave, is still negative, so more people leave. However, in the last 4 years, it has decreased by 18%, and the trend is going down. So there are less people leaving Morocco than before compared to how many come to the country. Reasons can be multiple, but I'll just mention that the amount of youth, the share of youth in the overall population is lowest in Morocco compared to any other country in the MENA region. The level of youth unemployment is relatively lower compared to others in North Africa. And also, the level of trust in state institutions is higher in Morocco, and actually is the highest, according to the World Value Survey last round, 2017 to 22 in the MENA. These could be some of the reasons why there doesn't seem to be such an increasing pressure for departure compared to other countries in North Africa. However, over the years, the nature of migration trends to and from Morocco also changed. It is also in response to global trends and the regional dynamics with the European Union. Containing migration has become priority number one in Europe. It is definitely a powerful tool for diplomacy for the kingdom. Just over the last decade, the European Union has provided more than 2 billion in aid to Morocco, and this is also in exchange for, or it was paved by EU cooperation agreements on migration for the control of migration. Recently, Morocco also has signed at the beginning of this year an agreement with Spain, an agreement on migration management, and there too in exchange for greater investments. But that said, besides the external dimension of migration, there is an internal one. Morocco is also confronted with important needs to address the needs and condition of migrants regarding the legal status, their access to basic rights, and the access to basic services. So these are all just topics that belong to the theme of migration in Morocco that I will try to eviscerate together with our speakers today. I'm looking very much forward to having their insights. I will introduce them to you, starting with Rania Fenniri, who is, I believe, the youngest today. She's based in Rabat. She's a master student at Mohammed V University in Rabat. She specializes in migration studies. She works with the capacity building team at the Global Refugee Youth Network, an NGO, and also volunteers with other local NGOs and UN agencies. Rania is passionate about her fieldwork and engagement aimed at improving the lives of refugees and fostering a more inclusive and compassionate society. Mohammed Tahar Siddiqui is in Fez right now. He's a doctoral student also at the Mohammed V University in Rabat. His thesis focuses on identity deconstruction and integration among sub-Saharan migrants and communities through cultural forms. Mohammed has carried out research on cultural representation in Orientalist narratives and identities in colonized minorities. He's also interested in issues of culture and integration related to Moroccan diaspora in East Asian countries, notably Japan. So a very interesting angle for research on migration and migrant identity. Last but not least, Nabil Fardousi, he's in Agadir right now. He's a doctoral researcher, a fellow at the Institute for Humanities in Africa at the University of Cape Town. He's an associate researcher at the Center for Global Studies at International University in Rabat. His doctoral research focuses on the forensic examination of the interlocking relationship between border death, racism, visuality, and postmodern violence at the Moroccan-Spanish borderland. His work aims at rethinking and decolonizing knowledge production in migration and border studies research, deploying African epistemologies. And Nabil is just back from research in the north, just 1 year after the Melilla incident from last year. So before giving you the floor and starting the conversation, I want to remind all the participants that you can write your questions all along in the chat throughout the conversation, and we will seek to address them at the end. We have about an hour and 15, so let's get going. Let's begin with the macro dynamics, the regional dimension. Regional dimension, both in terms of relationship between Morocco and its neighbors, but also trends in migration that play out in Morocco. Nabila, we'll start with you. I know that you have looked into the relationship between Morocco and the European Union on migration and aspects of migration diplomacy. Would you like to help us understand what are these conversations and what is at stake?
Thank you so much, John, for the invitation, and thanks everyone who's attending here, the speakers, and for the opportunity to join this webinar. concerning the migration diplomacy, now it becomes a trend in the global south, like countries that are in proximity to the countries of the global north, to attain some leverage. And in the context of Morocco, it has been very active over the last 2 decades. But more recently, we have seen a drastic shift in the deployment of migration diplomacy. It has become more aggressive somehow, like the geopolitics that are unfolding since the outbreak of the COVID-19. Morocco has, like, following the proclamation of the Donald Trump's administration that recognizes the Moroccanness of the Sahara, Morocco sought so many recognition from traditional allies, which means the European member states. At the same time, there were many consulate openings in the cities of Dakhla and Laayoune. But we can see the conflicts of the Sahara as a very central to the migration diplomacy, with 3 member states mainly, like Spain, France, and Germany. When the proclamation came from Donald Trump's administration, Germany criticized Donald Trump's proclamation, and it excluded Morocco from the summit in Berlin about Libya. Following that, in April, the Polisario Front was a very angry step towards that, and it was backfired with Morocco by unleashing like around 8,000 migrants. And again, the event was backfired by international audience, by instrumentalizing the life of vulnerable migrants in diplomatic spats. But at the same time, Morocco was criticized by the European Union by saying that the Spanish borders are European borders. So this actually created an intended pull factor that attracted novel trends, novel demographics of migrants, like East African, Eritreans, Chads, South Sudanese, and Sudanese. According to the High Commissioner for Refugees, there were like around more than 2,000 refugees and asylum seekers in the country, mainly from East African countries. So this created a kind of this migration diplomacy. It's more security driven than it's humanitarian. So we need more of a counterbalance of an approach that will manage migration. So after that, there were many diplomatic visits to the country to solve the problem, and many fundings. There were bilateral relations and trilateral collaborations between the EU and other member states countries. Like the last package of aid, it's more than 600 millions, and it included 152 just for border management. And again, it doesn't change anything. It's mainly pumped into border fences and border management. So it's security driven than humanitarian. And this unintended pull factor attracts many migrants into the country, and we don't have the kind of the infrastructural vision to host all these and capacities to host these large number of migrants, and they're not protected even when they are granted their demands and papers to process their asylum applications. It doesn't protect them from dispersal, deportation, and expulsion to interior cities in the country. So and there are many other issues related to the operational dimension of the SNIA and other protective mechanisms, which are mainly due to the conflicting visions of the country. Like we have 0203, it's still operative. At the same time, we have the regularization campaigns, and the thing is that the regularization campaigns were exceptional. They were not renewable, which you come.
Yeah,
so,
you put already a lot on Turner here. Thank you for giving us so many elements. So I do gather that you linked migration and the tool of migration agreements as one of the leverages in a much broader diplomatic negotiations within the framework of the Western Sahara, the Abraham Accords, the recognition of Israel, and so forth. And you also mentioned the new type of migrants arriving in Morocco, in part as a response to new agreements and the new shape of migration routes. I'd like to follow up on that with you, Rania. I know that you had mentioned evolutions in the migration dynamics in the region. Could you help us get some insights on that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So yes, obviously, all these factors contribute to changing profiles of migrants and the routes that they undertake while going to Morocco and arriving to their destination. So over the time, migration routes to Morocco have undergone significant changes, and they have been influenced by various actors and leading to a transformation and also the migrants' profiles. Previously, migrants and according to NGOs here, local NGOs who work with people who work with the migrants. Migrants coming to Morocco are primarily from Guinea, seeking to improve their economic conditions and prospects. Additionally, there are migrants from nations like Ivory Coast also, and Central African Republic and the Democratic Republic of Congo. They were part of the migrant community, also Senegalese nationals, and they were also present in Morocco. So in recent years, there has been a notable also increase in the Sudanese population, primarily due to the ongoing conflicts in Sudan. So Sudanese migrants often arriving in groups along with migrants from different nationalities and mainly from Chad also, and they have contributed to the evolving composition of the migrant population in Morocco. So previously, the main entry for many of these migrants, and most of them even they're coming from different countries, and they're from they have different backgrounds. The main entry points for these migrants was the Algerian border. However, recent years have witnessed notable shifts in the routes and journeys undertaken by these migrants. So one significant change that I would like to highlight is the increased utilization of the Mali route, primarily by Francophone West and Central Africans. So this route was facilitated by the open border between Mali and Algeria until 2013. However, due to security concerns and stricter border controls, migrants now will heavily rely on some people to help them cross and go into Algeria. And of course, through these journeys and while trying to get help from facilitators and smugglers, they often face so many problems and difficulties like human trafficking and people like who pretend to help them, they often take their money and don't actually help them to arrive to their destination. That's what many migrants often talk about when they're telling, their stories and their journeys. Another important land route connects northwest Niger to southern Algeria, commonly used by Nigerians and Cameroonians. So this route serves as the nearest entry point for those originating from Nigeria or Cameroon, and often get help also from people and facilitators, or also, like as I said, smugglers to assist them along these routes and to provide them transportation from Niger to southern Algeria. According to statements for migrants, they reported that crossing the borders from the southern regions of Algeria, specifically from areas near Tmenrast, once in southern Algeria, migrants often temporarily stay. They seek accommodation or income opportunities before continuing their journeys. And also they face so many challenges and security problems, and as I said, human trafficking. So some of them continue their journey northwards toward the northwest Algerian to Marnia, which is the nearest border point to Morocco. So these accounts also were shared by one of the protection officers working at the one of the NGOs partnered with the UNHCR, which is La Fondation Orient-Occident. So once in Morocco, these migrants have different destinations because, again, they have different stories and they're from different nationalities. So depending on their intentions, but cities along the Western Moroccan coast, such as Agadir, Casablanca, and Rabat, attract migrants who aim to settle in the country. However, instances of smuggling are less common among those who have the intention to stay. But the ones who have who want to continue their journey and who are seeking destinations in Europe, they often go to the northern coast, cities like Nador and Tangiers, and these cities act also as gateways to land and sea routes to Europe, with migrants residing informally in forests and hiding in groups, avoid the detection by Moroccan authorities. So the external factors are different, but now we have noticed an increase in number of people coming from Sudan because of the conflicts ongoing there. And I think that these factors keep evolving constantly, like evolving from country to another. Also border controls and security situations and transit countries and economic opportunities and destination countries, they all shape migrants' choices regarding their routes. Some of them change their opinions and choose to stay in Morocco.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Definitely changing dynamics, and the conflict in Sudan, new profiles, Eastern Africans coming all the way to Morocco, dynamics at the border. Thank you for helping us shed some light on that. So I'll come to you, Siddiqui. Morocco, country of departure, country of transit, country of destination. I know that these are not mutually exclusive, but I wonder if you can help us understand the trends. They may be distinct. I shared a few numbers before, but for instance, is it true that Morocco is less of a country of departure? The numbers seem to point some truth. In 2020, Moroccans were the first contingent of migrants arriving in Europe. I believe last year there were the 7. Over to you.
Yeah. So can you hear me very well? Is that fine?
Very good. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, in fact, for inviting me to this webinar. My name is Mohammed Tahar Sadiki, as you introduced me. I'm talking to you from Fes. So Morocco, in fact, is a country which has been experiencing all types of migration. So if we categorize them into 3 sections, which is a departure, a country for transit, and a country for hosting these migrants. So this is generally speaking. But the country, in fact, historically speaking, it has been a country for immigrants, receiving a large number of immigrants, historically speaking. Moroccan people feel that they are not the same tribe or the same culture. We are from Yemen, from the Arabian Peninsula. We are Africans. We have been, since we are like a bridge between 2 major continents, the African continent and the European continent. So we must have this characteristic, which is being a host country. But for example, post-war, North African countries, after the colonial power started, leaving North African countries, and after the Second World War, so the European continent, because of the distraction, so they believe that workers from North African countries, because of language, linguistic ties, because of culture, because of many things, so they started receiving a large number of North African labor migrants, basically from Algeria and then Morocco, Tunisia, and some, to some extent, some Egyptian things like that. So Morocco at that time was, because of geographical proximity to Europe, so the colonial powers made things very easy for Moroccan labor migrants to move to Europe to help in the construction of a devastated Europe after the Second World War. So France, Belgium, Holland, were major countries that they received from 1960 thousands, if not millions of Moroccans, to work in mines, roads, constructions of, many things in services. So it was and of course they were like 3 million by the year, something like 1970. 3 million Moroccans were there working and sending a large number, a great amount of money to the country, remittances. So at that time, both the colonial powers, if you want to say French, and other countries in Europe, and Moroccan authorities were benefiting from this dynamics of migrants, both of them, because these people receive money, the others receive very cheap labor. So the Europeans, of course, after being or having constructed many things, in fact, in Europe, they believed that they don't need more this migration. So they started their migration policies, very restrictive policies, in fact. With the Schengen Agreement, for example, which unified the European Union, and they put many measurements to enter the European Union. So that was one of the problems for North African migrants to join their families there or to migrate as they were easily. I'd like you to imagine that in Morocco, it was, just to have your passport. So the visa was not a problem. So you can move to Europe to work. You are very much, desired to go there and to work and to help thousands of people. Recently, there was a migration conference in Rabat. Some people talk about 6 million Moroccan, diaspora outside. Most of them are in Europe. We are talking about 10% of the Moroccan people living outside the country. So these people, as I say, so about 50 years of departure, Morocco sending its immigrants to Europe. So from 1980, things changed radically in the European Union. More migration policies. The Dublin regulations, for example, they put a lot of obstacles in front of migrants. And at that time, the European Union started selecting, if you want to say, migration. They don't need more of this, if you want to see all types of migration. So what happened? These migration policies implemented by the European Union created new strategies for migrants from North Africa to move to Europe. For example, they have to break laws, if you want to say, to go to Europe. Now, like irregular migration started at that time. And then at the time, the same, for example, we received more migrants from sub-Saharan countries who started also using Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, as Rania has mentioned, as a transit location to move to the European Union. So for about 20 years of transit migration, illegal migration from both North African and sub-Saharan countries, of course, characterized North African and European Union relationships. Of course, these sub-Saharan migrants, they have their push and pull factors. So they have conflicts, civil wars, they have, persecution, political problems, poverty, climate change disasters, which push them to move from their countries to North African countries and then to Europe. And there are, of course, pull factors in Europe: availability for work, job opportunities, very good life conditions, the sub-Saharan migrant aspirations and what they can find in Europe, so they believe that they can do something in Europe. So Morocco changed to a transit country for thousands of sub-Saharan migrants. At that time, the European Union started collaborating with North African countries to stop, if you want to say, transit migration. This is what the Europeans call the externalization. It means that not only facing migration at the European centers, but in the departure countries. They made a lot of agreements with Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, with hope to stop transit migration. So from like 2000, for example, Morocco started being or turning into a host country. It's a migration exporter country, it's a transit, and now it's a host country. With the help, of course, of the European Union, the pressure of the European Union, Morocco is turning into a host country for thousands of sub-Saharan migrants, basically. So Morocco, changed its law of 2003, which was very inhumanistic, if you want to see. It was very harsh for migrants. It was criticized by a large number of NGOs as being hostile and being, very, very, it doesn't respect, if you want to say, human rights to some extent. So Morocco has launched its migration strategy in 2003, 2004 to integrate thousands of sub-Saharan migrants. And now we have in 2018, for example, about 55,000 sub-Saharan migrants. They had now Moroccan documents. They are Moroccan people. So, and then we can talk about integration, for example, in all levels, the economic level, the legal, the social. So Morocco, in fact, generally speaking, it's a country which has experienced all types of migration. And it must have this rule because of its geographical position between two continents, Europe and Africa. Also, Morocco, as my friend Nabil mentioned, the Sahara matter, So Morocco has to be very intelligent in playing with this matter. We still have this political problem that we should not, for example, cut our relationship with the African continent, and we should keep our relationship with the European Union. So Morocco has to play this strategic role between the two continents, being friends and a great partner for the African continent because of economic reasons, spiritual reasons, religious reasons that we have with Africa, and the economic ties, political economic ties with what we have with the European Union. So Morocco now, as I told you, has to make all these things successfully, in fact. So this is generally speaking. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And as an observer of North Africa now for quite a few years, it appears to me that Morocco seems to be among the most skilled governments, balancing the contending priorities that you just mentioned. So let me bring you from the macro to the micro. So we talked about regional dynamics, we talked about relationships between Morocco and its neighbors, pressures from the European Union. And we started also mentioning how it plays out at the societal and at the individual level. So let's go from the macro to the micro at the individual level, because behind all our conversations, behind migration as a policy issue or opportunity, there are individual stories, individual who leave their countries due to one or more of the reasons that you mentioned: conflict, bad governance, or climate change, and therefore consequences on their livelihood. and so forth. And they engage in oftentimes very perilous routes that takes them to new realities. In Morocco, I'd like to ask you to focus on the migrant conditions, the needs, and the living conditions. And I'll start again back to you, Nabil, particularly asking if you can help us understand the impact of changing global dynamics and the relationship between the EU and Morocco. How do these play out then on the life of an individual migrant arriving in Morocco today?
I will go back to the event of May, 17th of May, 2021, because it was an intended pull factor of East African migrants, because previously we have West and Central African migrants who cross into Moroccan territory. This dynamic, because there was a total closure of the Western Mediterranean route, and there was a permanent installment of the Royal Armed Forces in many forests, especially Grove in Farkhana and in Salwan. There were some semi-permanent. They come very often. So there was a reshuffling of the routes, and many come to the southern cities to cross through sea routes. But on the lives of migrants, I will because many of these migrants, they come to cross evidently, so they are not coming to get integrated. And personally, I take integration as a bordering practice. It's part of the EU's externalization strategies in the country. So when it comes to the regularization campaigns, we have two: one in 2014 and one in 2017. And the total number is not individual. Like, there were certain people who benefited from the regularization in the first round, and they got renewed their resident permits during the second round. So they were not, like, we could say, like 50,000 people, like, separately. There were many other people. So generally they might be just around 35 people regularized at the time. And exceptional, it's called exceptional, which means you get a residence permit for 1 year and it's not renewable. And during 2021, like the beginning, like we found so many people got in an irregular status, and they could not renew their permits because of many conflicts between labor codes and the ability to get a rent contract. So there were many other technicalities that impede the bureaucratic process to renew the residence permit. When it comes to the health sector, like, people really live in a very precarious condition due to the fact that many of them live on the streets because people are coming as transit migrants. They are not settled, so many of them live in crowded spaces without access to medical treatments, and many of them could not access local hospitals because of the fear of expulsion. Many of them get expelled just to go out. So this was a very, except for some of the humanitarian helps from NGOs. And when it comes to the economic aspect, like, we find that many people in the informal sector, the vast majority of them, many work under precarious conditions, underpaid, because of their racial profiling. They don't act, and especially when it comes to, and the main sector they work in is the agricultural one, and there are two two places in Morocco. Like they work in Barkan, the region of Barkan, and in Ait Amira, Belfa, Sidi Bibi in the south. And many of them live within farms. So imagine the precarious conditions under which they live. And some of them rent in crowded places, and they work. Like when you come to see conceptually what's happening, like the migrants are caught a space-time trap. Like they can't move onward, go back to their countries because of many reasons. Like just people who want to apply for voluntary return, they can't even do it. Especially East African asylum seekers. Like people want to go back to their countries, and now it's impossible with the war. But prior to the war, people were applying and they couldn't go because of the bureaucratic process and the priority that they set, priority conditions. So many people, what they do, they go up until Wujda and they go through the fence back. So it's auto deportation. They don't wait even for the IOM or for the High Commission for Refugees to take their process, to take their applications. So it's really very dramatic, and you find people in a mindset of default integration, like they just want to sit because they fled war and armed conflicts and climate change. So they just want a safe place. So because the dream of Europe is no longer that it's no longer a dream, it becomes a nightmare for them. So and again, I want to refer to the events that happened in Casablanca that raised a moral panic during January of this year. And now Casablanca is the new border. It's no longer Nador or Ceuta. The new border now is Casablanca, to see the extreme dimension of externalization. Like people get expelled to some cities, and the northward they can go is just Casablanca. And the racial profiling that we have seen and the moral panic by the state-run media about Afrocentrism. They don't even understand what Afrocentrism means, which was very scandalous. And just the taxonomy of like the transit destination or sending country, that this is just a security focus because it's very fluid. A person can come to be a transit migrant, but then they fall in a state of destination, or it's very fluid because it depends to its temporal. The temporal dimension is very important because you might find a space, a settlement space, because of the insomniac waiting for the process of reaching Europe.
Right. Thank you. Again, very interesting to touch the securitization of migration, and an interesting statement. Maybe we can get back to it later on the fact that Casablanca is becoming now the new border. You depicted quite a bleak situation, but I wonder, Rania, if you can help us get an overview of the evolving condition of migrants in terms of access to services, good and bad. I wonder if the whole picture is bleak, or if there are some areas of improvement, and which are the areas where maybe authorities should put more attention.
Thank you so much for your question. I mean, as Nabil said, he talked a little about the conditions of migrants here in Morocco. And of course, when discussing the well-being and integration of migrants here, also their decision to stay or to look for other destinations, that depends also on the conditions they're living here in Morocco. So I think that education and health are one of the most important aspects and I mean, things to consider when talking about the well-being of migrants. Well, for migrants in general, they have some kind of access to health through again NGOs, and we're going to talk later about the role of NGOs here in Morocco. For example, there's the AMPF, l'Association Marocaine de la Planification Sociale, Familiale. Sorry. It helps migrants to get medical assistance, and I would say they mainly like do a great job, but they can't, cover all the all needs of all migrants. I've talked to last month to some of the medical assistants working there, and they were talking about some challenges that they face and also improvements. So they've been helping many migrants, and the ones that also many migrants come to the NGO when they hear about it, when they know that they can seek help there. But still, they also noticing like an increase in number of migrants, and they can't cover all their needs. Also, they have a lack of funds. So that is one of the challenges. Also, they mentioned the potential challenge of language. So most of migrants that speak English, they can't communicate really well with the people working here in Morocco. They often communicate more or better with migrants, with first speaking migrants. So this is one of the challenges also. For a population that is not included or that have not access to medical assistance is the migrant children or minors that are unaccompanied or separated. So this specific population, they don't have access to this kind of medical assistant, and the NGOs. This NGO itself is facing challenges to help them because they also, like, when you go to the hospitals, they need their parents or someone from their families. Otherwise, they can't provide them with help. And also, the NGO faces challenges in covering all the costs of medications and. Anything, I mean, depending on the case of the situation of these migrants, and they mainly can't cover like 100% of their needs, and also because of the increasing number again. So this is a challenge in accessing medical assistance. But I would say that for refugees, it is a little, it is easier, I would say, because they are provided with financial assistance, and they get funds from NGOs partnered with, for example, the UNHCR after being considered as refugees. So they get, for example, I mean, it is not so big like to cover their needs, but 800 dirhams per month, and it helps them to cover certain, needs in terms of health. Also, refugee minors, they have this financial assistance before turning 18, but also migrants don't have these financial assistance, and they're not provided with financial assistance, which is a challenge, and they often face as many difficulties to integrate and to access, all these services like refugees. So it is more difficult for them to do so, especially with their documentation issues, and also, as I mentioned, this population that don't even have, their parents. They're not accompanied. They arrived alone, separated, and they're facing serious challenges. And because of as I talked with the protection officer, they've said. During his work experience of 7 or 8 years, it was a little bit under control, like the situation before, but then because of the increase in numbers each year, it is becoming more difficult to deal with these number of migrants and refugees. Also, in terms of education, they mentioned the people working in the NGOs that help migrants access to education and public schools, they mentioned that it's easier for children under the age of 10 years old than the ones who are older, and they have more difficulties in accessing or integrating public schools in Morocco because of the language again, and because they can't really determine their level of education, so they don't know which level or where to put them, and then they need to provide them with programs, with specific programs for these migrants and refugees, and they need to assure that they have access to quality education. And again, this is a great work by NGOs. There are so many volunteers who and teachers who provide classes, and for these migrants that don't even have access to education. Also, because of the even for refugees, the procedures, they take so long to issue issued by personal identity documents. So they cannot do anything. They cannot go to school, and they cannot even think about it, or have a job. They're always hiding, as Nabil said, from authorities, and so they want to be arrested because they don't have, again, any papers or documents, and also because some of them mentioned. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, we'll go back to the role of TSOs later. Because I know that you also want to cover that, and I think it is important to mention it. So I'll get back to you on this, but I wanted also to cover another aspect, which is rarely covered by researchers, let alone by media and in general public opinion, which is the role of art and culture. And Mohammed Siddiqui, I know that you're passionate about art. You belong to a family of artists, and you have adopted a very interesting approach in your research, which focuses on identity needs. I wonder if you can help us understand why that is important and how it plays out. Over to you. And you're on mute. We cannot hear you.
Well, thank you. In fact, thank you. Yes, is that fine? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you, Nabil. Thank you, Rania, for your interesting talk. Just for example, I'd like to add something important that, for example, having this number of migrants from Morocco with a fresh new migration policy with very limited experience in hosting migrants. If you want to see, Morocco is a migration standing country, but this time is a migration hosting country. Of course, with the pressure of the European Union, Morocco trying, as I say, to be in the middle of this policy and not to be too much, in the extremes of the Europeans and the Africans. Of course, with some mistakes, some black spots, but we shouldn't concentrate basically on what is negative in Moroccan migration policy. I'd like to look at the Moroccan migration policy in general, that Morocco is pioneer in dealing with the migration issue. So, for example, my perspective is that there are lots of changes and lots of development in the migration issues in Morocco. And for example, when we talk about problems, social problems, economic problems, also Moroccan people have the same things, not only migrants. You can talk about 70% of Moroccan people cannot have, easy access to health or easy access to work or education. It's hard also, not only for migrants, but also for Moroccan people. So this is we have to understand. So there are some mistakes, as I said, but mistakes could exist in France, for example. You could see yesterday what is happening this week, last week in England. So we hope that we develop our way strategies of looking at the migrant issues, but of course we should concentrate on what is positive in this policy. My perspective, for example, is that we need integration. So these migrants, not only economically speaking, legally speaking, politically speaking, but should also find some cultural links between Moroccan people and these migrants. That could be the solution, for example. When these migrants come to Morocco, there is a huge problem they face about identity. So identity is a real matter that these migrants face. Of course, their major dream is to go to the European continent. And some of them, even we talked to, they said, Europe is not our destination. We want to go to Canada, to the United States. Europe also, for some of them, is only a transit continent. Imagine how they aspire, their aspirations are so great. So they are now blocked in Morocco. Of course, with the European Union, of course, plays a major role in blocking this involuntary immobility of this migrant. They are in Morocco. They are in immobile state, so they cannot move to Europe. It's hard for them to live in Morocco, and it's hard for them to go to their countries with political, social, economic, and climate change problems. So now we talk about identity crisis of these people. So these people, many of them want to change this traditional narratives that we have about them, that these are migrants, illegal, poor, victims of war, victims of many problems. For example, the cultural things I am working on in my thesis is that these people use cultural expressions, and Morocco gives them a very wide space, if you want to see, to work on in terms of culture. They participate in many festivals. There are many associations, NGOs. I can give you the example of Fondation Occident-Orient in Rabat. This great foundation is giving help to thousands of refugees from all over the world to express their culture and identity through art works, and they have radio station. They have many things. In fact, these are very positive. So identity here is, we have to work on identity. So we should find, as I said, these cultural things that can unify between the Moroccan people and these Africans, these sub-Saharan migrants and refugees. So if we could understand these people and they can understand our culture, we have many things, by the way, in the Moroccan culture that relate us to sub-Saharan African cultures. We have to work on these links, spiritual links, musical things, for example, in terms of food, of clothes. We can talk about, for example, languages, religious ties, for example. Let me tell you, for example, we have in Fes a historical monument, which is Zawiya Tijaniya. Zawiya Tijaniya, it has existed for about 300 years. It's a cultural, spiritual, religious link between Morocco and its sub-Saharan Africa. So why Moroccan people in the past were successful in bridging the gap between Moroccan population and sub-Saharan Africa, and now we cannot, because we use too much politics, I believe. We should concentrate on what is cultural more than what is political in our relationship, in fact. So Zawiya Tijaniya, for example, has been, the link between Morocco and these people. And we can talk about millions of sub-Saharan African people who visit Morocco just to visit this religious center. So I believe that culture, for example, can help a lot dismantle many of the stereotypes about sub-Saharan African people. It can remove a lot of racism. Of course, in Morocco, I don't believe we have systematic racism. We have racism, but it's not systematic. It's not, you know, implemented politically speaking in Morocco. We have discrimination, a kind of this, but we have also discrimination between Moroccan people. The black skin, these problems. I believe culture can remove many of these obstacles in front of these people to integrate. If, of course, these people want to integrate, because the problem now, many sub-Saharan African migrants, we don't know if they want to stay with us or go to Europe. So now with the fortress Europe, the borders are blocked. We don't know what is happening in Morocco. We don't know exactly what these migrants want, to stay with us or to migrate again. So I believe the time they are spending with us in Morocco, we have to find cultural links to work on what is cultural, artistic, and then build relationship with these people, in fact. So this is generally speaking what I can tell about this point, in fact, identity and culture. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Siddiqui, a very powerful and very unique perspective yours, and I'll expand, you know, I will invite you to expand further in the next round, which is actually focusing on the meso level, in between the macro and the micro, which is the role of society itself, and also state-society relations, state-migrant relation, and society-migrant relations. So starting again back with you, Nabil, you talk to me about the Morocco domestic policy and the fact that Morocco has been very proactive in designing new migration diplomacy, but it's a little bit lagging behind in terms of domestic policy and regulations. You mentioned the SNIA, the National Immigration and Asylum Strategy. Can you help us understand where are we at with the domestic front of migration policy?
Yeah, the national strategy for asylum and immigration, which was launched in 2014, we're almost it's 9 years right now, and since then it has remained inoperative, due to some legal procedures, because of the 0203, which penalizes the illegal entry or exit of foreigners into or through the Moroccan territory. And also the Morocco has not yet adopted the asylum framework, and another one related to human trafficking. There were three legal mechanisms, yeah. Apart from the 2 regularization campaigns, there is no office that processes the asylum applications. So the only one that processes is the United High Commissioner for Refugees. If the final stage is called BRA, people get the papers that they apply for asylum, which they use to protect them, presumably. But the people who reach the final stage when it comes to the High Commission for Refugees, concept of BRA is very limited, the number. I don't have a metric, a precise metric, but now when it comes to the national strategy, we need more. It should actually operate, because it will allow many people to be in a regular status, and many people who actually deserve a refugee status. When it comes to this, we find, especially people who come who fled war, there are many people now who are trapped, and they want actually to apply for this, but they don't know. But I think the problem with it, I'm imagining the scenario of making the SNIA operative, it will be again a pull factor. I think this is because it's very problematic with regards to the to the infrastructure, like when it comes to education, health, and the economic conditions. Like we can see that it will be a good. It's much needed in this context, but much work should be done to achieve this. Like we have now two conflicting realities. We have so many refugees and asylum seekers are pouring into the country, but at the same time we have many Moroccans are fleeing the country, which is very contradictory in this regard. For the protection of migrants, yes, the United Nations High Commissioner is outsourcing many of its programs, like artistic, as Mohammed mentioned, to Orient Occident and to OMDH in Oujda and many others. It's a plausible thing. Like, and many of them actually are applying for naturalization in Canada and the United States. They want to go because and some want to get reunified with their families abroad. In the southern region, we have like migrants are included in territorial plannings, like for settlement in Khamis Samira. So it's the first of its kind. So ahead, there are plans for the integration of migrants and refugees, but the conditions that will facilitate this are very at stake. So there is much work needed, and I think it will be. We are faced with the future of so many migrants pouring into the country, and we will have a kind of fatigue, an infrastructural fatigue. Like it's already there in place, but it will be quite. I'm quite interested to see how this will be down to earth. Like we see, as I mentioned, like migrants are kept in a trap, like in a space and time trap. Like they work, they are included in certain informal sectors, like especially the agricultural one, but their rights are not fulfilled. Like even Moroccans who work in the agricultural sector, if you come and see how Moroccans work themselves under precarious conditions in these areas because of the absence there are labor unions, but they're not effective when it comes to defending the workers' rights. So we need more. We need transversal work in intra-ministerial. It's already ongoing intra-ministerial collaborations and work along with many other stakeholders involved in the management of the integration dynamics. So
okay.
So 4 minutes are over.
Well, you mentioned the role of the state and definitely the state has a major role to play, but you also pointed out to society and the organized form of society, which we know under the name of civil society, which is a topic that I know Rania, cares about, started talking about. So Rania, why don't you pick up from where you left, mentioning the important role that civil society has played, is playing, or may be playing in terms of addressing migrants' needs and expectations.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sorry, I'll mention one more thing. The audience, again, you're free to write your questions to the speakers and we'll address them. So, sorry, back to you, Rania.
Yeah. So, yeah, as I mentioned before, and the NGOs, local NGOs are doing great work and helping the integration of migrants and refugees and asylum seekers. And I will talk about local NGOs that I've worked with and I've seen their amazing work with migrants. They're mainly in Rabat and Marrakesh. And I think that they, in terms of documentation, as I mentioned, they're helping, they're working directly with the UNHCR and helping to issue refugees. I'll focus more on the forcibly displaced migrants and to like getting their identity documents, but still they take so long, and because they mainly the procedure is not only, you know, the NGO, they're just like helping them, and they organize what they call listening sessions. These like migrants, and they hear about their stories and their situations. They can, if they can provide them with financial assistance, they also do that, and they can guide them, you know, to other NGOs, because they all work together, dependent on what the migrant needs, if it's in terms of education or housing or health. And for example, the Foundation Orient-Occident provide migrants and refugees with the protection houses, because obviously they don't have anywhere like to go, and during that period of waiting for their documents and for yes, seeing what their future are going to be like, and determine, you know, their future in Morocco. So they provide them with this help, and they always welcome them into their NGO. As Mr. Mohammed Sadiqi mentioned, they have this cool radio station and many other spaces for refugees and migrants to express themselves, and also for Moroccans from the local community to interact with them and to do cultural activities and things related to music and art. Also, they have these programs that they organize, and that helps refugees and migrants. I can say they forget about their you know, documentation issues, and you know, the help from society and NGOs. They help them to you know, not have like challenges, you know, from every, you know, aspects. They only, you know, focus on one thing, and they have you know, one main problem. But also when you are in a country, like a new country, and you can see that people are trying to, you know, they welcome you, they help you. It's not as you're alone and they're being racist, or you have to deal with any other problems. You don't even have a house. Many of them, before they get to these NGOs, and before they go to the UNHCR, the IUM, they don't have anywhere to go. They just, you know, if they have some people that are already here, that are already arrived in Morocco, so they contact them and they go, you know, in groups and whatever they're, you know, in popular neighborhoods such as in Taqaddoum or Menel or Yaqub al-Mansour. So some of the people working in these NGOs mentioned that something that was a little bit surprising for me, that they also, like, people from different groups, you know, specific nationalities, they help each other, and they help the new migrants who are coming if they are from the same country, and they let them in their houses, and, you know, in that difficult period of time. But others, they don't have anywhere to go, and there are centers that are very difficult. They have really bad conditions. They always go to, especially minors, but they run away from these centers because they don't feel like they belong there. So these NGOs are existent to you know, help these migrants and refugees from different aspects, you know, but they are little like to compare in other regions. They do not exist in many other regions in Morocco, and you can see that most of them are in Casablanca or in Rabat and maybe Fez and other cities, but then there are so many regions, so we need more of these NGOs and we need more help. And also for NGOs that are currently existent, they lack funds to help the increase in numbers, as I said, of these migrants and refugees. But also from my humble experience, I noticed that the attitudes of the population of Moroccans towards migrants are, I would say, positive, or a mix of positive sentiments and occasionally instances of racism. But I would say that people thinking there were people thinking that, okay, migrants coming from, for example, sub-Saharan Africa, they just keep coming, or from Syria, and we already have our own problems, and they're trying, they see them as competitors. We already have problems of employment, and they just keep making the situation worse. I feel like this is also a lack of awareness, and many people think that because they don't really know they don't know about migration and what is a migrant, what is even a difference between a migrant and a refugee, and they just keep spreading these ideas and to their children. You can see in popular neighborhoods, you can hear like children calling by some names they don't even know that these are like racist words, or they're being racist. They just repeat what they hear. Yes, and so they don't even realize that they're being, maybe they love them and they're playing with them, but they keep calling them just because they hear these kind of things. So it's also a lack of awareness that we need to work on as the host community.
Right. You indeed touch upon a cultural aspect, and this is a great way to segue with Siddiqui. On a positive note, that will be maybe the last comments that we make, and we'll then wrap up and answer one of the questions. Siddiqui, you have the pleasure and the privilege, I'd say, to look at one very powerful way to link among cultures across languages, which is through art and culture. You look at the role of art in various forms, and I want you to let us benefit from your insights and your research to understand how the relationship between Moroccans and migrants also can be mended through art.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. This is a very good question. This is, it's a kind according to what I believe. So it's like one of the solutions, if you want to see, to bridge the gaps between these minorities and the Moroccan population. So we can work on what is economic, what is political, what is legal. That is very good. But I believe we should not forget the cultural side in bringing these people to the heart of Moroccan society. I believe Moroccan people has a lot of things to share with sub-Saharan African people in terms of culture. Culture is very important, and these people, these minorities, we are talking about 117 minorities in Morocco. These people, when they come to Morocco, they bring with them their cultural expressions. We can talk about languages, dialects, food, clothes, songs, music, dancing. You cannot imagine how many cultural things they bring with them. They don't bring money, they don't bring laws or money, but they bring culture. And I'd like these people to build, if you want to see, like a third space between Moroccan population and these minorities, a place for integration, not assimilation and not marginalization. We need integration. So integration means that these two people, Moroccan people and minorities, have to build a mutual communal space to integrate. I believe that culture, expressions of culture or cultural expressions, for example, the case of music and songs, food, for example, clothes, many things we can build and we can establish and we can develop. So to give voice to these people. So to give voice to these people, so they can show us what they have, and we can show them what we have, and build a mutual space through culture. So, for example, we can do, for example, festivals for food in Morocco. Festival for African clothes in Morocco, festival for African, for example, musical and songs festivals. We can work on what is linguistic between Moroccan people and these minorities. So I believe these links, which have already existed in Morocco, we are Moroccan people. We shouldn't forget that we are also African people. And a large majority of Moroccan people came from sub-Saharan countries, either during the trans-Saharan slave trade, which was for centuries, and then thousands of Saharan people were forced to come to Morocco, or with, for example, colonial powers brought a large number of African people to Morocco to use them with the army to control the population, this colonial technique to control the colonized with another colonized people. Or, of course, with trade, we had very good relationships with African countries in terms of economy. So we are African people. It's only a matter of skin color, or some languages, something different in food, in culture, in clothes. So I believe we should work heavily. This is one of the neglected points in the Moroccan policy of integration. So we should not concentrate too much on what is economic and political or legal. We should give voice, as I said, to culture to speak. And then I believe I'm working on this in my thesis, and I am discovering a lot of things with this in sub-Saharan African minorities. So they want, culturally speaking, to integrate with the Moroccan people. And they feel that, for example, once they come to Morocco, imagine, the first day in Morocco, they discover that we have, or let me talk here about Gnawa music, for example. This is an international festival which takes place in Essaouira. This music, for example, make African people believe that they are like in their land. We have this historical, musical, artistic work which is made by Gnawa groups in Essaouira and all over Morocco. Of course, it tells about enslavement, what happened in the past, but these are cultural links which bring these people to Morocco and make them feel at home. So I believe
Yes.
that culture could be very important. Many things of culture, not only music and songs. I said about food, clothes, many things, in fact, to develop, and then we can bridge the gaps. And if these African people, for example, they can feel at home, they can collaborate with Moroccan people, they can share their knowledge with us. And then, because I believe migration is always positive, it's not negative at all. So if we look at Canada, for example, without migration, there is no Canada, the United States, the European Union. So
Not
I
just
believe
Canada.
that,
Yeah.
yeah.
I definitely agree with you. I couldn't agree more that culture and art helps build this common space. And I think now our music is an example of not just a common space, but something even more, something new, which is the fusion of different cultures into something else. I want to take these last few minutes to address one of the questions from a member of our audience and then make concluding remarks. And thank you all. You all raised very valuable points and perspectives. One question from our audience is if one of you would like to comment a little on the implication of the Abraham Accords on migration. I think, Nabil, you mentioned that briefly earlier. I don't know if you want to comment or if Rania and Sadiq, you have any comments on that. In 2 minutes.
Yeah, the Abraham Accord was very crucial, was very central to the ongoing migratory dynamics since 2021. Like we have seen the first diplomatic spat between Morocco and Spain, and how it unleashed like 8,000 migrants, including 3,000 minors. It was a very it was a well mediatized event, and it got so many backlash. And the thing is that how the event itself, like how the reactions prompted new migratory flows. The first thing, it gave visibility to the mobility of Moroccans, because it was invisible. Because the great flow of migrants, it gave visibility to Moroccan migration, and it was an incentive to many Moroccans who went afterwards. So this is the first thing. Like it prompted a lot of mobility, which was a Frankenstein's monster somehow. The second thing, it was a pull factor for other mobile populations that used to go through the Aegean Sea and through the central Mediterranean route, which especially East African migrants. They were crossing from Chad or from Libya to cross to Italy. So I talked to dozens of migrants, and they want to link this event, the Abraham Accord, to what's happening. And many of them, when I heard, why did you come here? They said they heard that the border between Morocco and Spain is open. And the event happened in May, when they heard, when the border stampede took place. It happened in May, and quickly in June, hundreds of East African migrants started to pour in, especially Sudanese. And at the same time, this created a crisis between Morocco and Spain. And in April, and Morocco was opening the border like it was like a turnstile, like you open the tab and you close it. And many people, East Africans, crossed successfully, especially in 7-9 March of 2022. In April, there was a visit of Pedro Sánchez and his and foreign minister. They had there was a royal meeting, and the diplomatic relations got renewed, and then there was a drastic change again, more security driven, and it has and even the Pedro Sánchez tried to claim the support of the Morocco's autonomy plan. It's got a backlash. Like in Madrid, you find Sahrawi people are coming to protest, like the Moroccan, the Sahrawi diaspora there, and all this, it's migratory, and it's these dynamics were triggered by the Abraham Accord. Morocco sought not only financial support, but also diplomatic support.
Yes. So we have a couple of minutes left. I want to use these last 2 minutes to thank you, Rania, to thank you, Mohamed Tahar Siddiqui, and thank you, Nabil, for your observations, for taking the time to share with us the fruits of your research and your own reflections, your own perspective, and also your passion. It's great to see young Moroccans be passionate about this policy matter, which can be an opportunity or liability, and requires definitely engagement on behalf of youth to improve things. I took 2 pages of notes from the new EU approach and new diplomatic dynamics, mentioning the Abraham Accords and the question of Western Sahara and how it plays out on migration, the new type of migrants, which we also see in Tunisia, East Africans and Sudanese, different profiles and different objectives. Morocco increasingly becoming a host country and therefore begging for a greater efforts to integrate migrants, but current policy is not quite responding to those needs. New dynamics internally, the Casablanca is the new border. That's an interesting concept to dig into. The importance of cultural integration, the identity needs, the cultural links. I love the mention of Zayat Tijaniya, but also more current, the role of music, the Gnawa music. So the only word that comes to mind to me now is mzien, a Moroccan word to say thank you. and MDN for all your comments. But I also want to thank Faria behind the scenes, Intisar, Gabriel on MEI's side, and on NAPI's side, the precious work of Safia in Rabat, and also of Shiraz in Tunis to putting this together. And thank you again. Thank you to the Middle East Institute. And stay tuned for other such